Hello everyone, Void here coming back at you all with another top 10 Commander video. Continuing the Halloween theme, I'm going to go over my picks for the top 10 best horrors in the Commander format. I just hope that the YouTube censors understand what I'm trying to say here. It's not the other word, it's horror. Horrors as creatures are actually pretty common, and I didn't realize this, but some of the best commanders are actually horrors, and you're going to see them on this list. Now, I wouldn't say there's a specific thing that horrors do. You know, like with certain creature types, they kind of do similar things. With vampires, you could deal damage, you get +1/+1 counters, or you can gain life. It seems like horrors kind of do a little bit of everything. So without further ado, let's start it off here. Number 10 is a newer card, Obosh the Prey Piercer. Now this from Ikoria. Obosh is really cool and I like the companions. I kind of took a little break right around Ikoria, which probably wasn't a good idea because there were a lot of newer mechanics. I had to kind of catch up and some things I still don't understand fully. But I like the idea of having a condition where you can play this once outside of the game, so long as your starting deck in Commander contains nothing but odd converted mana cost cards and lands. That's pretty sweet, so Obosh could be a companion for just about any Rakdos burn deck where you're dealing damage with odd converted mana cost stuff. So Vile Smasher the Fierce, Karavek the Merciless are two options I would go for in Commander personally. You're just spending the whole game damaging your opponents anyway, and it's not that hard to find odd converted mana cost burn spells. Compared to a lot of the other companions, I think being able to cast this outside of the game once is actually pretty powerful. You get double the damage for all of your spells once you do that. It is kind of dangerous because Obosh counts all players, so you could deal double damage to yourself. However, a lot of the burn spells you're going to be playing in these Rakdos burn decks are going to be one-sided, so it shouldn't really be that big of a deal. Number 9 is Gisella the Broken Blade and Bruna the Fading Light. Yes, it's a tie because it's not even so much about these creatures individually, even though I think both of these Angel Horrors are actually pretty good creatures in a lot of mono white decks. But Brazilla, Voice of Nightmares, is a force to be reckoned with. Flying for Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink, your opponents can't cast spells with converted mana cost 3 or less. So just about the majority of targeted removal can't deal with Brazilla, meaning your opponents need a board wipe. And they need it quick because Brazilla has Vigilance and Lifelink, and she's just going to keep coming at you. Number 8 is Psychosis Crawler. So here we have another card that's going to force our opponents to lose a life. Psychosis Crawler, it's a very good option if you want to play more of a wheel and deal strategy, where you're playing nothing but Wheel of Fortunes, Windfalls. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses a life. And its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand, making it an all-around solid creature. It's colorless, so it could fit into just about any deck. For synergy purposes, it's most likely going to be in red and blue, the colors where you have a lot of those spells that can wheel. In a game that is really coming down to the wire, having a Psychosis Crawler and just drawing more cards, one-sided life loss is always going to be powerful. Number 7 is Woe Strider, one of the best sack outlets in black, I would say. And in just this year, Theros Beyond Death has had some really strong cards. We have Shadow Spear, and I think in black, Woe Strider is becoming a staple. It's pretty much what Viscera Seer is as a sack outlet. You know, you just sack another creature, you scry one, but it enters the battlefield with a creature to sacrifice, which is appropriate. It's 3 mana to play. You should get some extra value. But what makes it even better is that it has an escape cost where you can bring it back if you pay 5 mana and exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. It escapes with 2/+1/+1 counters on it too, so it gets even bigger. So not only is it yet another good sack outlet on a creature that you don't have to pay any mana to sacrifice a creature for, but it's one that you can bring back pretty easily in these kinds of decks where you're likely going to have a lot of cards in your graveyard. So all in all, it comes into play with a creature you can easily sacrifice, and then after that, you pretty much have whatever you had with Viscera Seer. Number 6 is Mind Slicer. One of the deadlier cards, I would say, whenever it's put into a graveyard from play, each player discards their hand. This combos really well with other cards that require discard, so if you have cards like Liliana's Caress, you can force your opponents to lose a lot of life. Waste Not is obviously one of the best cards you can have in black, period. So having it out there, sacrificing it, and then getting the trigger means you're probably going to win the game at that point. Mind Slicer's been one of the best cards in black for a while now. It just has that deadly trigger, and it just seems like there's more things that synergize with this card now, where you have tiny bones, or anything that can punish your opponents for having a smaller hand size. Number 5 is Ravenous Chupacabra. For all intents and purposes, this is a better Necrotol in Commander. I mean, for the same mana cost, you get a better ETB. Yeah, you don't get the it can't be regenerated part, but that rarely ever comes up. So, for the most part, if you can blink it, if you can bring it back from the graveyard repeatedly, the ETB is more often than not going to be better. Targeted removal for the most part is a one-time use. On creature ETBs, it's even more powerful because you can abuse the ETB. We of course have Panharmonicon, so you can get double the triggers. Quite possibly the most consistently played horror in the Commander format. And number 4 is the Gitrock Monster. I said we had some pretty powerful commanders that were horrors, and the Gitrock Monster is a pretty powerful horror. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sack it unless you sacrifice a land. You get to play an additional land on each of your turns, which is nice. I mean, you're playing a land deck. Give me extra land drops, please. Whenever one or more lands are put into your graveyard from anywhere, you get to draw a card, which is the dangerous part, because it makes things like Sylvan Safekeeper beneficial, gives you some kind of reward for doing that. In addition to just making things disgusting like Crucible of Worlds and Strip Mine, not only do you get those shenanigans, but you get to draw a card for doing that, in addition to the additional land drops, so you can just keep destroying lands. So land destruction being a pretty powerful strategy, but if you're just going for good stuff landfall, the Gitrock Monster is still a pretty decent commander option. And then number 3 is Caretaker, Son of Yogmoth. One of the coolest cards designed in the last couple years, I would say. Phyrexian mana coming back just for this one card. Pretty much making each black in a cost like Phyrexian mana, where you can either pay the black or pay 2 life. That's just such a cool ability to have, and it made it one of the more powerful commanders, like immediately. Paying life in Commander is not really a big deal because you start out with 40, so if you can supplement the strategy with decent life gain, you don't really have much to worry about. And if you have something like Aetherflux Reservoir, don't even worry about it, because once you played 7 spells, every spell you play is just going to keep gaining you more life than you have to pay, and you can easily combo off with something like Bolas' Citadel. Oh, and every time you cast a black spell, he gets even bigger. And he has lifelink, so not really much to complain about. One of the best all-around mono-black commander options. Something I would say is quite possibly the best mono-black commander. But we have Yogmoth himself, so don't ask me to make that hard decision. Number 2, we have Yarok the Desecrated. Just all around, not a fair commander. So many disgusting interactions with Yarok, so many infinite combos possible with Yarok. What would require 2 cards that are part of the 99, you only really need something like a Palinchron and enough lands and you've pretty much won the game. But even when you're playing this deck the fair way, it's still going to be incredibly powerful. Like I mentioned before, you have cards like Ravenous Chupacabra, you can abuse ETBs consistently with Yarok. And the thing is that it's not even just creature ETBs, it's permanent ETBs, period. So if you have Bojuka Bog, you get to exile 2 graveyards. I don't know what it is about black, green, and blue, but they've done their best to make it like the best 3-color combination in the Commander format. We had Tasigur, and then we had Muldrotha, and you're like, okay, enough's enough. Then they gave us Yarok last year. It's like, we don't need any more. Oh, we also got a Sultai-colored Commander deck for this year's Commander set, which I don't think was quite as overpowered, but still, enough of the Sultai. There's just too much of it, and it's way too good. Alright everyone, so before I get to number 1, which I think if you know your horrors, you probably saw this coming, we have some honorable mentions. We have Cataract Parasite, perfect for something like Obosh, but mostly seen in Nekasar, because you have a red permanent. And then we have Spellskite. If your commander is important for your strategy, Spellskite's a pretty good way of changing a target for targeted removal. Pretty expensive, so it's not the best card for your money in Commander, in my opinion. Then we have Chasm Skulker, gets pretty big with the +1/+1 counters if you draw a lot of cards. And then once it dies, you get a ton of those squid tokens with Island Walk. We have Hell's Caretaker if you like a lot of reanimation. This has always been one of the better creatures to do that. You do have to do it on your upkeep, which is a bummer, but still never bad if you can just sack a creature to bring a creature back. And we of course have the Lieges. These Lieges tend to be pretty good in Commander because they offer you some pretty powerful abilities, in addition to giving you an anthem for each color. Alright everyone, so number 1 is Attraxa Praetor's Voice. Surprise, surprise. Yet another overpowered commander option that has black, green, and blue in its cost. Attraxa is just disgusting. I mean, Proliferate is just a nasty thing to have every single one of your turns, and it just interacts with so much. You could have poison counters, you could have +1/+1 counters, which is the most basic strategy, but still pretty good. And then you have loyalty counters. You have Planeswalker decks, so that becomes even more powerful with Proliferate. Oh, and did I mention, the creature has the best keywords ever, making it one of the best blockers ever. So if you do want to play more of a defensive Planeswalker strategy, Attraxa makes it way too easy to do that. Just one of the most played commanders in the last 4 years, and it's hard not to see why. It's incredibly abusable, you have access to 4 colors. I think people saw the spoilers and immediately thought, yeah, this was a pretty big deal. But anyway guys, let me know what you think about the top 10 horrors in the Commander format. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next time.